Thanks for joining us here at Rose Quartz Mediumship podcast, where we simply adore anything and everything healing and metaphysically based. I want to talk a little bit about a 7-day water fast that I recently did and all the amazing things that I got out of it, as well as some of the uncomfortable things. So I just want to start by saying that I am not recommending that you do a 7-day water fast. If you want to do a 7-day water fast, I think that you should be in contact with your medical professionals. This is not a pitch for you to do a 7-day water fast. This is just my own lived experience that I want to share with you in the event that there are some helpful aspects or pieces that may resonate. So the way that I ended up doing the 7-day water fast is pretty congruent with who I am and the authentic way that I move through the world. We had been on vacation and there had been a lot of shifting and changing that came up on that vacation, areas in my life where I was not aligning with freedom. And one of the last days on vacation, I kept getting this little nudge from the universe about a 7-day water fast. And fasting is something that I've done in the past in various different ways and have always really loved it. I've always done it in a way that was pretty serious. So if I went into something, I would be prepared and I would do all the things. I would check the boxes ahead of time. And I just got this nudge that I really needed to do this 7-day water fast. And my husband had gone home earlier than I had from vacation. And so I was at the ocean with my 3 boys. And I called him and I was telling him how I'd gotten this nudge and that I wanted to do a 7-day water fast. And he started asking me questions about it. It was like, you're just going to drink water for 7 days? And he started talking about all the preparation that would need to go into it. And I said, I think I'm going to start it tomorrow. And that's just part of my personality. When I feel something, when I get that kind of a nudge, it doesn't always make sense to do it in that moment, cognitively, cerebrally. It doesn't make sense. But the sensation that I feel inside of my body makes sense to me. And that undeniable nudge was something that I was going to listen to. And it's something that I've worked really hard on in my life, is doing the thing that doesn't make sense because it feels right. Because there's something that is deeper inside of me that is telling me to do the thing that doesn't make sense. And so I came home, and now mind you, I'd been on vacation. So I'd had alcohol, I'd had fried food, I was underslept, not the ideal condition to go into doing a 7-day water fast. I got home and started the 7-day water fast. And my husband was kind of like, not so sure about that. He thought that I should be more prepared. And I'd been drinking caffeine. And so I was going into it underslept, under-resourced, having come out of a very emotional vacation with a lot of shifts, having eaten food that I wouldn't normally be consuming, having consumed alcohol, and feeling energetically depleted, and yet the timing couldn't have been more perfect. And so I'm just going to kind of give you an overview of what my experience was in those 7 days. The first couple of days, it was really interesting to have thought patterns of food roll through my mind on repeat. My body was like, hey, are you going to feed us? Do you remember? The body wants to be fed. And dealing with that anxiety loop that was happening in my mind was a really interesting process. Being able to acknowledge it and see it and also say, I'm not going to listen. I'm not going to have any food. So for the first couple days, I had lots of thought patterns of food. And I will say the thought patterns of food, what it was that my body was wanting was all very high calorie, not as nutritionally dense food. By the end of the 7 days, all I was craving was plant-based whole food. Like that was the only thing that wanted to go into me. I didn't even have thought patterns of any sort of processed food, of any sort of calorie deficient. Nope, nutrition deficient, high calorie food. It didn't even go through my mind. And there were some moments during the fast that were just so incredibly impressive. Just so incredibly impressive. I had felt something kind of brewing inside of me around my business, Rose Quartz Mediumship. And it hadn't landed yet. The details of it hadn't landed, but I knew that there was a missing piece that was coming. And I got that missing piece pretty intensely in the very beginning of the fast. Within the first couple days, I got this enormous download about how to pivot the business into a more authentic place. And that just felt so delicious. It felt like that in and of itself was worth doing the fast. Having that clarity in such a crisp way, the clarity of the clarity was really beautiful. And that was, for me, just such a powerful revelation. And it was something that I should have been able to see all along, but I couldn't, right? And I believe that when we can't see something that is sitting there in plain sight, it is because we have an energetic or emotional block that we're holding in our system. And one of the things that I saw on repeat during this 7-day water fast was a ton of purging of energy. And it came in the form of tears, random emotions, right? I would be walking through the house feeling perfectly fine, and then all of a sudden I would be flooded with grief or sadness. And I would burst into tears, and I would just allow it to be exactly what it was. I didn't need to know what it was that I was purging. I understood that in this 7-day water fast, I was going to be purging a lot of emotional and energetic blocks. And man, did I. There were moments where I was really angry. There were moments for no reason, right? I was really angry. There were moments where I was so sad and grieving. And there were moments of expansion. And every time I saw a purge of a big emotion, sometimes I would get the story of what it was. Sometimes I wouldn't. It was irrelevant. My body had already let it go. My nervous system had already let it go. And then I would create the space for these beautiful downloads and beautiful epiphanies and beautiful realizations to come through. So very early on in the water fast, I'd gotten the message around my business, which was really fun and activating and exciting. And as the water fast progressed, there was this day where I was getting ready to see a client. And I will say that I made this plan when I had a full caseload of clients. And I don't know that I would do that way again, only because by the time I was done with clients, I was really drained. I was really tired. I didn't have the capacity to do much else. And so luckily my husband was there as a beautiful support for my children and the home. He picked up a lot of slack for things that I would normally be doing because I just didn't have the capacity. And so I was seeing clients and then I was resting and allowing this shift to happen. So definitely by the end of my work day, I was done. And the universe very beautifully and gracefully had a couple clients who needed to reschedule, and I rescheduled them to the next week. So I did end up with a couple holes in my schedule where I would lay down and rest between clients. But I was getting dressed one day before work, and I had picked out a couple of different shirts, and I wasn't sure which one I was going to wear. And I yelled to my husband, who was in another room, and asked him, "Hey, which shirt do you think looks better?" And it hit me like a freight train that I didn't care. That I didn't care which shirt looked better. I only cared how I felt. And that wasn't going to be determined by anybody else. And this is something that I've been working on for, I don't know, all of my life. And I had the cognitive or cerebral knowing that it didn't matter what anyone else thought of how I was dressed or what my body looked like. It only mattered how I felt about the way that I was dressed and how I felt inside of my body. But I couldn't move that from a cognitive cerebral place where I knew that's how I should feel to actually feeling that. To actually feeling that I didn't give a fuck what anybody else thought of my body and the way that I was dressed. And it hit me like an absolute freight train. And so I yelled at him, "Never mind, I don't care." And he's like, "What?" Because he was not present for all the things that were running through my mind in that moment between asking him which shirt looked better and then yelling, "Never mind, I didn't care." And he came into the room and he said, "What?" And I explained to him that I didn't care. And it was the first time that I felt it. I didn't think it, I felt it. There was an embodied sense. It was a different layer to that onion. And it shifted so much in my life. So much in my life. And as I came out of the water fast, I realized I wasn't wasting energy, emotion, thought on what I was wearing. I just picked what I wanted to wear that day. And I started to notice that I wanted to wear more dresses and skirts. And I'm not somebody who has ever really worn dresses or skirts. And so this felt really odd, but I couldn't deny the fact that that's what I was actually really wanting. And so I started allowing myself to wear dresses and skirts, and I bought a couple of dresses, not being sure if it was going to last or if it was just a passing thing. And it just got more and more intense. And I started picking the clothes that felt the best on my body and truly not caring what other people thought of the way that I was dressed or what I looked like. And then I started to recognize that divine feminine energy was coming out of me in a very intense way. And I was seeing it in many different expressions. The clothing was one of them. I noticed that I wanted to have my hair down rather than pulled back all of the time. I was noticing myself shifting into a place of not needing to be in control, wanting to follow rather than lead inside of my marriage. And I thought that it was related to the shift around my body. And then I realized that I must have purged some energy around not feeling safe in my divine feminine. And with that purge, yes, there was the purge around not caring what other people thought of the way that I was dressed and the way that my body looked. But I'd also purged energy that said it wasn't safe for me to be in divine feminine. And this whole expression of me that I would have said wasn't there, that the amount of divine feminine that I embody was what it was. All of a sudden, without this block, I realized I had this deep desire to be in more divine feminine in so many different expressions. And the moment that that really landed for me and I recognized how unsafe I had felt in divine feminine, and I began to really reflect upon past relationships where I was not going to be in divine feminine. It didn't feel safe for me. And being able to recognize that I felt safe enough inside of myself to allow the more sensitive soft, nurturing, sensual, sexual, creative, intuitive sides of me to be expressed more fully and to be embodied in a way that I'd never embodied them. It was such a gift. It was such a gift. And I'm not the same as I was before I did the water fast. I'm not meant to be. That was the point of it. And I had a lot of people ask me what was making me do the water fast. Was it weight loss or was it health related? And the answer was, it was a nudge from spirit that I followed. And yes, to everything. I knew that there were massive health benefits and that doing a 7-day water fast reduces your risk of cancer and allows your body to heal and rest and reset. And I came out of it having a different desire for different types of food. And I came out of it not consuming caffeine. And I came out of it prioritizing the frequency of how I want to live. During the water fast, I recognized that the pace of my life doesn't work for me. I want a slower pace. I want freedom of time and freedom of choice and freedom of self-expression. And I don't want to be pushing and doing and chasing. I want to be at a slower pace. And I started noticing all of these nudges that the universe had been giving me around slowing down my pace for years. And in the 7-day water fast, it became so simple and so easy. And we're still in the process of restructuring things inside of the business and things inside of our personal life to allow for a slower pace. But I didn't feel resistance to the slower pace that I desired, because I purged energy out of my energy body and out of my physical body that said that I couldn't have everything that I want if I wasn't pushing and if I wasn't moving at this faster pace. And with the purge of that energy, it provided the space for me to feel different about a slower pace. And all of a sudden, I could see a pathway to a pace of life that was slower, a way of living that was more aligned and healthier for me and for my family. And it became easy. It didn't feel overwhelming to think about how to change our reality. It didn't feel impossible to change our reality. It just felt simple and obvious and like it had always been there. And I just needed to open my eyes and be able to see it. And I should pause and say that I did a ton of somatic healing work while I was doing the 7-day water fast. It's something that I believe in wholeheartedly. I think that somatic healing is such a powerful modality. And the combination of the water fast, where I had all sorts of energy blocks and emotional blocks being cleansed out of my body and my energy body, and simultaneously was doing somatics on it, was so powerful. And if I had it to do again, I would have gone in more prepared. I would have been well-resourced, right? I would have been slept more effectively. I was definitely underslept headed into this 7-day water fast. I would have been caffeine-free for a minimum of a month. I would have not had any alcohol in the 2 weeks or month before. I would have not had fried food. But this is the thing. I believe that when you get a nudge from spirit, you listen. And there was a lesson there for me in that. And I have always loved riding on lines and dancing with lines and seeing the limits of who I am as a human. And this was no different. It was no different than having my babies at home. It was no different than marathon running. It was no different than applying for colleges or programs that felt like they were outside of my reach. It was no different than some of the shamanic work that I have done, some of the energy work that I've done. I like to know where my own limit is. There's something about that that is really, really empowering for me. And so, no, it wasn't ideal. But one of the most beautiful lessons, one of the most impactful lessons that I got is that I'm capable of doing things that are so much more difficult than what I think I'm capable of doing. And that knowing that I can do things that are more difficult than I think that I can changes everything. It took the line of where I thought I could go and it moved it out. And it didn't move it out just a little bit. It moved it out miles. We are all so much more capable than we believe that we are. We are all so much stronger than we believe that we are. And simultaneously, we are all so much softer than we believe that we are. And again, this is not a recommendation for you to do a 7-day water fast. This is just my experience. But I can tell you that it was profound. And it was beautiful. And there were moments that were really hard. There were moments where I was tired and I was drained and I wanted things. I wanted flavor, something other than plain water. But in wanting those things, I learned so much about myself. And in not giving them to myself, I learned even more. And so I would do it again, and I will do it again. And I loved every moment of it, even the really difficult ones, where I was playing with the line of what I was capable of. And it was such a spiritual process for me, and such a beautiful form of expansion of energy and my nervous system. And I am so grateful that I gave myself that gift, and that my family supported me through that process and picked up the pieces of things that I would normally do. And my next one I will probably do in a different fashion. But this one was exactly what it was supposed to be. I hope that you have a beautiful morning, day, evening, or night, wherever it is that this podcast finds you. And we so appreciate you being here with us at Rose Quartz Mediumship.